lightninginsider.com. You're going to get consistency with our guy, Erik Erlendsson. K, not a C, 2 S's after the D on Twitter/X. Make sure you use that promo code JNZ over at lightninginsider.com. Get $10 off, not just this season, but every recurring season. You heard me guys mentioning before my entry for the Bolts blogs on the Lightning website, lightning.nhl.com. Erik did it for January on the case for John Cooper to win the Jack Adams Award for the best coach in the league. Still crazy how he hasn't won it. And then mine on the return of Ryan McDonough to Tampa Bay. What's going on, Double E? How are you?
I'm good, man. What's up with you?
You know, just another day here in paradise. It's Cristiano Ronaldo's 40th birthday, so we're getting old. I'm like, oh my God, a couple months away from me. We'll start at the position I think that worried a lot of people last night, but Nick Paul leaving after only 3 shifts last night. Positive sign on the ice today. Does that surprise you at all? Because I figured if he missed that much time last night, you probably wouldn't see him on the ice, but he was out there.
Yeah, I guess it just depends on what it actually is, right? I mean, we didn't even get a specification and, whether it was lower or upper body last night. So, look, I saw him walking around the hallways last night. He seemed okay. But, the one thing I've learned about this medical staff is they're very precautionary. Right. So if there's any question about something, they'll hold a player out. And, if he underwent testing this morning, if he underwent testing last night, just to check something on it, that's just me speculating. That's not anything that I had seen. But if that's the case, then if everything checked out, that would explain why he was on the ice today. It was a very optional skate. Obviously, there were only a handful of guys on the ice. But, look, anytime a player leaves a game injured and you see him on the ice the next day, that is absolutely a positive sign.
I mentioned this last night when I was posting my post-game videos. Has Luke Glendening ever had a bad game for the Lightning? Like, it's just crazy. Yeah. Like, I don't want to jinx the guy because now on Thursday night he's probably going to screw up. But, I mean, I look at him and I go, he wins every puck battle. He wins a ton of faceoffs. Obviously he's not like a 30-goal scorer or anything like that. He's a fourth-line center, number 1 and number 2 penalty killer. But, like, he just makes good plays all the time. And even games they don't play well, he makes smart plays. It's just – he's such an underrated part of this team. And I know there's going to be a lot of people looking to make or wanting the Lightning to make roster moves here in the next couple of weeks, but that dude's not going anywhere, man. I love this guy.
No, and in fact, I hope they re-sign him, right? He's a UFA at the end of this year. And he's never going to be flashy. He's never going to stand out. He's going to get his 8 minutes of ice time per game. But you need players like Luke Glendening to win. Right. If you look at any team that has ever won a championship, there's players like Luke Glendening that are on your team because you need a big face-off win. It's a good chance you can go out and put him in the circle, and there's a good chance he's going to win it. You need a penalty kill. There's a good chance that Luke Glendening is the first guy over the boards to go out and help kill that penalty. He's not going to give you a ton of offense, and I know that depth scoring has certainly been an issue with this team this year, especially in the past month plus, as they've kind of hit some droughts in putting pucks in the back of the net. But he does so many little things right because of a smart player. And, you talk to Luke and he understood that, he wasn't going to be a big-time goal scorer at the NHL level. He needed to find something else to do to kind of carve out a niche. And he's done a great job. I mean, you look at his career and what he's done all those years in Detroit and couple of years in Dallas on a couple of pretty good Stars teams. He's one of those integral players that, just add something to the team that you need to have. Now, we'll naturally kind of move right in here to Zemgus Girgensons, right? Because he doesn't have a goal. Mm-hmm. He only has 2 assists, I think, on the year. So offensively, you're getting nothing out of Zemgus Girgensons, but doesn't mean doesn't have value to the team. I mean, he has been involved in a lot of scoring chances, and okay, he doesn't have the scoring touch of, a middle six kind of forward even, but you look at the little things as Zemgus Girgensons does. Everybody likes to look at plus minus.
Right.
And you'll look at Girgensons' number. He's a -7. Dude's got 2 points, and he's only a -7.
Right.
Like, that's kind of telling of how good defensively he is, how good he kills penalties. Yes, you want him to score, don't get me wrong. But that's not a reason to say he's worthless on this team, right? And
I wanted the guy to score so bad. I feel like if he scores, he'll get 3 or 4.
You hope so, right? Like Guy Boucher used to say all the time, goals are like bananas. They come in bunches.
That was a Guy Boucher, huh?
Well, I mean, it might have come from somewhere else, but Guy used that line quite a bit in this couple of years here.
All right, so I want to show this real quick because this is, and we got to do something here. I want to make sure. There you go. A lilac with 5 petals is actually a good luck charm in Latvia. So, our Latvian gangster, Zemgus Girgensons, I feel like this is something that we need to start because I brought it up a couple weeks ago. It did work. I think we need to go full bore and get him delivered to the locker room or something. Because he's getting his chances. It's not like Zemgus doesn't get his chances. He had a couple of shots last night, and he's another guy that works hard. The depth scoring has to improve, but I don't know. I don't look at Glendening and Girgensons and be like, it's your fault, right? Like I look at some of the other guys that get more offensive opportunities. I look at the Gonsalves and the Shafis and the Asimons of the world. I look at those 3 guys before I look at a guy like Girgensons.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting. I don't know how much stock you put into sort of advanced numbers and everything else, but Money Puck put out a graphic the other day in the top 15 expected goals rates for lines. Mm-hmm. So this is based on players that have played at least 150 minutes together this year. Number 7 in the league in expected goals percentage for was a line of Luke Glendening, Zemgus Girgensons, and Mikey Esimont. and again, it's not because they're creating a lot, because they don't create a ton, but they're good defensively.
Right.
It's a good defensive line. So, there's a balance here. Yeah, again, you want, gosh, if you can get 10 goals out of Luke Glendening again, you'd feel great. Last night was just his 3rd, right? He got 10 last year. He's only at 3 this year, so there's been a drop off there. But, not everything on your lineup has to be about scoring goals. You also have to defend. And, those 2 guys in particular, Glendening and Girgensons, defend very well.
When we look at some of these other guys in the middle 6, when kind of the guys that we just brought up, Asimont and Chafee and who did I just say? Asimont, Chafee, Gonsalves. I mean, which one of those 3 guys do you think can really, find a groove here and possibly find the back of the net? Because it's just not enough. Like you just need more help.
Of those 3, it's probably Gonsalves. I mean, he's an offensive player. He certainly put up some offensive numbers in the AHL, and it doesn't always translate from the AHL to the NHL. But you look at, since he came back up a couple of games ago, his cross-ice pass to Hagel, I forget which game it was. I think, was it the LA game? I think it was the LA game. What a great pass, right? He was the guy who led the way, carried the puck up the ice on the Glendening goal. He doesn't get an assist on it, but he's the guy who led that charge up ice and got the puck in deep, and Girgensons recovered it, and they end up scoring. So he's got the offensive capabilities. I think, when he went back a couple weeks ago, he regained some offensive confidence, and I think you're seeing it. He's been a little bit more involved around the net in just the past couple of games. He understood what they asked him to do when he went to Syracuse, and he went down and he worked on it, and that's why he got a quick recall. Plus, they need it, right? They need other guys to kind of produce on a semi-consistent basis, and it can be collective. It doesn't have just to be one guy, but it can be collective because there's a reason Connor Geekie, was sent down to Syracuse, because they need him to find his offensive game and kind of rekindle and the spark that he had in his game and find the confidence that he needs as well to be successful. And Connor Geekie at some point is going to be a successful player in this lineup, but they need him to score more. And that's the reason why he was sent down. And we'll see. I mean, look, you've got 3 more games now before the 4 Nations break. We saw a lot of movement over the last couple of days around the league with trades and everything. I don't know that Julian has anything up his sleeve right now, but, they're probably looking at a few things to maybe be a precursor to something coming at some time between now and the trade deadline.
And and I said this before when we started the show, Julian doesn't like to wait till the trade deadline. He likes to get it done before then, but I think there's a lot of teams that are still in the hunt when it comes to the wild card, so that might be kind of pushing this time back. But this team needs to make some moves. See, and I look at guys like whether it's a forward or a defenseman. I mean, I think they have to get both. I think they need to get 2 forwards and a defenseman. How does the salary cap and how it's going to raise? How does that affect how Julian is going to attack the trade deadline this year? Some people said, "Oh, well, it means they." I don't know. I just think it means like, hey, now he has an idea. When we spoke to him last Monday, he didn't really have the figures in front of him. He may have, and he just didn't, tell us. But now that it seems pretty concrete, do you think that's going to kind of enable him to be able to go out there and make some moves with the idea of like, hey, the salary cap is going to raise so we can have some more talent here?
Well, I think that maybe factors in a little bit, just because of the way that he likes to operate, right? He likes guys with contract control, right? He doesn't like the UFA market. He kind of had to go the rental market last year with Duclair and Dumba because of the salary cap situation. They were in LTI. They're not in LTI this year, and I'll tell you the difference it means between being an LTI and not being an LTI. You don't have to trade dollar in, dollar out. You don't have to do it that way. You don't have to move pieces around to fit guys in, right? So you have, I think the last number I saw available, somewhere around 6.9 million in available cap space at the actual trade deadline. So it's a little bit less as you get, it builds up the further you get, or the closer you get to the trade deadline, but that would be their cap space at the actual deadline. So that gives you an idea of the type of player that they could bring in, because everything's prorated, right? Like you're picking up, if guys making $6 million a contract, you're only prorating it to what's left on the NHL schedule in terms of days. So that's the biggest thing that's going to impact what Julian can do. He could actually, if he wanted to, and it sounds like this is where he would like to lean, he could add a piece without subtracting a piece.
That's great.
He could add something.
He said that was one of the biggest things that he kind of slid in there a little bit.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a money in, money out thing, as we've seen in years past. I'm like, oh, okay, that's good.
Yeah, and it even means he doesn't even necessarily have to send guys down to the minors, because, I mean, we know they've been carrying 20, 21 players really since Moser got hurt. And that's the other thing that's going to happen too, is JJ Moser will come back. He'll be ready certainly by the restart of the schedule after Four Nations. Yeah, but I don't like right around now is when the timeline was.
Right.
But with 3 games left and 2 of those are back-to-backs.
Yeah, no sense.
But he probably could if he had to. But as I mentioned at the top, the way that they operate is they err on the side of caution with players and want to make sure that they're ready. And with an additional 2 weeks of opportunity to rest, maybe he squeaks into the last game, and that gives him an additional. We'll find out. We'll see.
I was thinking that too.
But yeah, I mean, Moser's going to come back.
He's that guy. Like, hey, I'm good. Like, oh my God. Like, he's just hanging out with him in the locker room the other day for like 10 minutes. And he's just like talking the ear off of the athletic trainers. I'm like, he's probably pissing everybody. This dude wants to be on the ice so freaking bad. Oh my God. What does that mean though, E? Like for the defenseman? I mean, you look at it and they have, and we're counting Max Crozier in here now. You have 8 NHL defensemen when he comes back with Moser and Hedman and McDonough and Chernak and Radish and Perbix and Lilleberg and Crozier. Like, you have 8 guys there, and people are going to be on the hunt for defense. And it's kind of, Max Crozier to me is an NHL defenseman. I think he should be up. I think he should be playing with the big club. I think he needs to learn, on the fly here. He hasn't had many scenarios where you look at it like, wow, that kid's overmatched. Do you think they send one of those guys out or 2 of those guys out at the deadline to either bring in another defenseman or as a package deal to get a forward?
I could see it for sure, because with Moser coming back, who comes out, right? Like who's the odd man out? And look, Max Crozier's back in the American League, right? So he's still just kind of biding his time and waiting for an opportunity to see regular minutes with the team. And, and does Moser go right back to pairing with Victor Hedman? And then what does that mean for Darren Radish? And then what does that mean for Nick Perbix? And are you going to put a righty-righty combination together if Emil Lilleberg is the odd man out on the lineup? We saw a little bit of a rotation early in the year between those 3 guys, Perbix, Lilleberg, and Radish. But Radish has been getting power play minutes right? He was on the top unit. He's back to the second unit on the power play. So he's been kind of a piece that they've been utilizing to some of his strengths, which is his shot, right? We know how hard of a shot he has and when he gets it on net. So, I mean, these are good problems to have, but they are issues that the team is going to have to deal with one way or the other when JJ Moser is ready to come back. One of the interesting things is, I believe, and I haven't seen this from the league yet, but Julian hinted that there's no restrictions on movement during the Four Nations. It's not like the holiday break for Christmas where players can't be moved or traded or anything like that. There could be movement over the Four Nations break. Right. They may make us work too hard over the Four Nations face-off. We'll see.
Thanks, Julian. Who do you think? Who do you think the Bolts like the most? And when I say like the most, think that is going to be a part of their future for the longest amount of time, and I'll go 3 to 5 years. Out of the four of Lilleberg, Crozier, Radish, and Perbix.
Ooh. I would probably put Crozier at the top of that list. If we're talking long term, yeah, just because of the style of game he plays. He's patient, he's poised, he's physical, he's smart. Again, not going to stand out in a lot of ways, but the way that the way that he plays the game. I would probably put Lilleberg second because he's the only lefty of this group. Again, plays a physical style of game. He's still learning, to kind of be better at what he does. Picks his spots a little bit better on stepping up and making hits. You remember when he first came up, he was like, he wanted to hit everything and it was taking him out of position. And, so he's learned to kind of pick his spots with his physical play. And he's a big body, right? Like he's just a solid, big body player. And then after that, I'd probably toss a coin between Perbix and Radish. Perbix is scheduled to be UFA at the end of the year. I think Radish, is up at the end of this year as well. Yeah, I think he had to sign it. He might have 1 year left. Forgive me for not knowing that off the top of my head. But if you're asking me to put those in order, that's probably the order I'd go.
So when you think about trading one or two of those guys, does it automatically go to that or right? Because that's the thing. It's like that's who they want, but you could probably get a bigger return if you trade a Lilleberg or a Crozier, right? So damn, it's a tough one because I think the way that they look at Radish now, this is a guy that's been in the system for a while. They know what he's about. He's finally achieved like NHL defenseman status. They trust him on the power play. They changed things up on the power play. I don't know if it was necessarily his fault why it wasn't working so much. And I still think he should be on the first power play unit anyway in that Matt Mitchell Chafee spot. What about those guys offensively? Going back to kind of what we were just saying, at what point do you think they look at some of these guys and go, we really need to infuse? Like, how long do you give a Chafee and a Gonsalves and an Asamont before you start realizing like that they're not part of the solution?
Well, I still think it's a relatively small sample size on both those guys, right? Chafee didn't come up until the last half of last season. Performed well, liked a lot of things that he does, especially the board battles and his willingness to get to the net. Gage is still a very small sample size in terms of the NHL level. You certainly have a feel for him, how he plays in the A. He just needs to be able to translate that to consistency at the NHL level. And, is he going to be a big time? Could he be a big time scorer in the NHL? I don't know if he has that capability. I don't know if I would even classify him necessarily as a guy who would be a 20-goal scorer, but I feel he's a guy who could be 12 to 15 goal scorer if he's at the top of his game. It was interesting last night with the injury, obviously losing Nick Paul. They lost Sorelli for a bit as well in that game, and Gonsalves getting the opportunity to play with Kucherov and, some of the top six guys. And, he's probably a low-level top six guy, which means middle six, I guess. So as we talk about trying to find a middle six guy, if he can pop in some offense, he'd be an ideal middle six guy, depending on who he could play with. So I don't know how long the leash is on those guys. There's not a ton in the system, beyond an Isaac Howard who, he's at Michigan State. Michigan State is ranked number 1 in the country or number 2 throughout most of the season. So they're hoping he goes on a nice long playoff run with Michigan State. I wouldn't be surprised that whenever his season is done, as he ends up signing a contract, just kind of reading between some of the lines of guys and people that I've been talking to about him. That's your high-end skill that's coming. Ethan Gauthier is a guy who's almost a projected perfect middle six type of forward, but he's in junior. He's not coming anytime soon. Not until next year at the earliest. Even if he can make the jump from junior to the NHL. Geeky's the guy though. Geeky's the guy that you got to get going. He's a top 15 pick in this league. He's got tremendous offensive upside. If he gets going like he did early in the year when he was with Hagel and Cirelli and how good that trio was, if that kind of unlocked a lot of things, and it just hasn't been consistent for Geeky, but that'll come.
All righty, entertain this thought. I really think that the Lightning need to give a long, hard look at bringing Isaac Howard into the fold after his college season is done. Yeah. And the reason being is, regardless of what we've seen when it comes to sample size, like Isaac Howard to me is a better option right now than Gage Gonsalves and Mitchell Chaffee and Mikey Asimon because of the high-end talent. And I don't think that he's going to come in and automatically be, the greatest player in the world. But I also, after watching this kid all year and watching as much as I can, know that he's not going to come up here and poop the bed. Like, he's just not going to crap all over himself. Like, he'll come up and his talent and his skill are undeniable. Is his body NHL ready? No. But could you honestly say Chris Kreider and Cale Makar and some of these other guys, they looked ready? They both did not look like NHL players, but right after their college season was done, boom, they're up to the big club. When you have a team that's as good as the Tampa Bay Lightning can be, right? How much longer are you going to have a top 3 goalie, a top 5 defenseman, 2 top 12 forwards in their prime, and then, Jake Gensel, and then one of, if not the best penalty killing unit in Hagel and Cirelli? Like, these guys are ready to win right now. Yeah. And if you're telling me that Isaac Howard can come in and inject some life into that third line, and your third line could be Isaac Howard, Nick Paul, and then a Chaffee or a Gergens, or a Chaffee and a Gonsalves. I mean, what's the drawback? Why wouldn't Julian look at that as a possibility from happening, other than like, hey, we just want to marinate him and we just want to make sure that he marinates in the AHL and learn the pro game? I mean, some guys, I think they just need to get up there and play with the big boys.
I mean, you're not wrong.
That means a lot. That means a lot coming from you.
We saw Chris Kreider sign his contract here in Tampa at the 2012 Frozen Four, right? He didn't have time to really celebrate the national championship that they won before he was signing his contract, and he was off. I think they played Ottawa in the first round.
Yeah,
that
year. He was fantastic.
Boom, off he went, right? So yeah, look, I just get the sense that that's the route they're going to go, right? Because the college players and their contracts are different, because it's the one area of the CBA where the players have a lot of leverage. Because after 4 years in college, those players can opt to become unrestricted free agents. We saw this with Sammy Walker, and we saw this with Cole Gutman, specifically with the Lightning. Those were two guys they wanted, that they drafted, especially Walker. I mean, Walker was such a long-term project, right? Super skilled kid, came into a development camp and just lit everybody up in that 3-on-3 tournament. And I know it's just development camp, but he came every year, and college players have to pay their own money because there's still the amateur status. So college players still had to pay their own. He came to every single development camp. I think he was 5'6" when they drafted him. He shot up to like 5'10" in like 3 years. It was crazy. I remember walking in and saying, Sammy, what in the heck happened? Like, he really shot up, and it was so noticeable. But they couldn't sign him because he went back to Minnesota for his 4th year. And opted to become a free agent. The same thing, Cole Gutman won a championship with Denver, opted to go the free agent route and sign with Chicago's system. So there is leverage. So the one thing that teams can do in situations with Isaac Howard is, you sign with us now, you're going to finish the season in the NHL. And then we'll see what goes on after that. And again, it just depends on how deep into the postseason that Michigan State goes. That would determine, because they won't have any of these type of discussions with him or his representatives until his season is done.
Right.
But I would anticipate, because you can, for lack of a better term, dangle that carrot in front of the player. Join us now. We want you here. Come play in the NHL. We'll give you at least a game. We'll figure things out. We'll see where you fit. Maybe you get into the playoffs. If we get into the playoffs, maybe you find a way into our lineup. Like, those are the things you can kind of use as leverage yourself to be able to get a player like Isaac, because the entry-level contracts are pretty standard. There's not a ton incentive-wise. Like the signing bonuses or the bonuses, they're all pretty structured. So every entry-level contract looks the same. But what can you offer a player like Howard? Come out of college now, join us as a pro at 20, 21 years old. You can play now. So that's why I think that's a route that they could easily go in this situation, depending on how far Michigan State goes. I would be surprised, again, based on conversations that I've had with people, if Howard does not join the organization sooner rather than later. It's hard for me to see him going back a fourth year. Right. And then if he goes back for a fourth year, now we're kind of hanging in the balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just imagine, like, if things really work out, and who's to say that he doesn't end up being the guy that plays with Hagel and Cirelli, right? Yeah. And then you have a third line of Nick Paul and Connor Geekie. And then if they go out, my whole thing too is if they bring him up, then all you have to do is, in my mind, get one forward, right? A guy that I want, maybe not him, but like him, is a Josh Anderson. Stock down in Montreal, but we know, you and I, 30-year-old guy's got term left on his contract for next year. He was the reason why Montreal won that Stanley Cup final game against the Lightning a couple years ago. That is a big body guy, right-handed shot. He can play on the power play. I mean, that is a guy right there I look at in Montreal. I know they won, but they're 7th of 8th. That's one of those type of guys where I look at a veteran and Howard. You get a defenseman. Now this team is cooking.
Yeah, and Robinson was a big factor in that 19 series against Columbus.
Anderson,
yeah. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, he was a monster. Big factor. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, he can atone for some of his transgressions from over here, from hurting the Lightning.
That's right.
Tampa Bay Lightning's own lightninginsider.com, Erik Erlendsson. Use that promo code JNZ, $10 off, not just this year, but every recurring season. Erik_Erlendsson. That's a K, not a C. 2 S's after the D. Go check him out all the time. And, of course, tomorrow night at the game. I'm actually going to be at USF tomorrow night for the Amir Abdur-Rahim game, brother, so I won't see you. But we'll talk to you next Wednesday right here. Hopefully, you're talking about more Lightning victories. Appreciate it, man. Have a good week.
Yep. Thanks. Big game tomorrow night for sure.
Yes, sir.